Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Continuing with Hazrat Maulana Khalil Ahmed Saharanpuri. Miscellaneous anecdotes. On the occasion of Hazrat's fifth Hajj, when he went to Masjidul Haram for Tawaf-e-Qudum, Maulana Zafar Ahmad Tanwi was sitting by Maulana Muhibbuddin, who was among the senior khulafa of Hazrat Haji Imdadullah. He was also well known as a Sahib-e-Kashf, one who receives inspiration from Allah Ta'ala. At that time, Maulana was reciting his wird from a Durud Kitab. Suddenly he turned to me and said, who has entered the Haram at this time? The entire Haram is filled with anwar, celestial illumination. I remained silent. Suddenly we observed Hazrat Saharanpuri Rahmatullah alayhi, who had just completed his tawaf, heading towards Babu Safa for the Sa'i. He came near to Maulana Muhibbuddin Sahib, who stood up, smiled, and commented, I too can say who has today come to the Haram. He then shook hands and embraced Hazrat, who proceeded for the Sa'i. Maulana Muhibbuddin sat again on his place and said to me, Brother Zafar, Maulana Khalil is an embodiment of Nur. He is nothing besides Nur. I did not see Maulana Rashid Ahmad Sahib. I was told that he was a Qutbul Irshad. Having seen Maulana's Khulafa, I can say that truly he was Qutbul Irshad, hence he produced such perfect men, such as Hazrat Maulana Khalil Ahmed. 2. Maulana Ashik Ilahi Sahib writes, Hazrat rarely employed the power of his heart. He would resort to it only on special occasions of need. There was a debate in Saharanpur between Muslims and an Ariya. The Ariya was transferred from Rupri to Saharanpur. Hazrat was present in the gathering. Maulvi Kifayatullah and Maulvi Ahmadullah were appointed by the Muslims to record in writing the proceedings. However, Maulvi Ahmadullah became tired and the duty devolved entirely on Maulvi Kifayatullah. In the debate on the side of the Ariya was a young, handsome sadhu clad in red garb. He was reclining in an armchair. When a Muslim speaker would commence his speech, the sadhu would sit up, lower his head. In consequence, the speeches of the Muslim speakers would be extremely disjointed and poor. Even Maulana Abdul Haq Haqqani was unable to present his speech on Dor and Tasalsul. These are technical terms in the science of logic. I, Maulana Ashik Ilahi, then wrote a note to Mirza Aziz Beg, the chairman, informing him that when a Muslim speaker took the stand to speak, then this yogi cast his hypnotizing influence. Therefore, Maulana Khalil Ahmed Sahib should be notified. The chairman passed the note to Hazrat. Immediately after reading the note, Hazrat cast down his head. Thus commenced the battle of Haqq and Batil between the spiritual hearts of the two. Within 2 minutes, the sadhu stood up from the armchair, looking restless, and left the gathering. Thereafter, speeches of the Muslim speakers were like the ocean let loose. In the end, 11 people embraced Islam. During the afternoon meals on the same day, Hazrat said, I firmly believe that Islam would remain dominant. Haqq dominates and cannot be dominated. But Allah Ta'ala is independent. His fear should be at all times and with everyone. Third anecdote. After the annual Jalsa of Madrasa Mazahirul Ulum, the visitors from outside had left. The train for Punjab arrived first, and the travelers for Punjab took up their seats. A sadhu coming from Hardawar, who also happened to be on the train, inquired about the large gathering on the station. A khadim of Hazrat informed him that here in Saharanpur was a great sheikh and people from various places had come to meet him. They were now returning home. After the sadhu inquired further about Hazrat, he sat down silently. The khadim afterwards explained that after a while he experienced an alien feeling and severe pressure on his heart. There was no indication as to the cause of this condition. His heart was gripped by fear and bewilderment. He was unable to distinguish night from day, nor was he aware whether he was in a gathering or alone. He was caught in a spell of extreme bewilderment in spite of the coach being packed to capacity. He even lost the ability of speech. While embroiled in this fearful state, he suddenly saw the resemblance of Hazrat Saharanpuri, whose reflection commenced to fall on his heart, and he heard an inner voice commanding, "Recite, Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil." Although the tongue was dumb and numb, he started his zikr with his heart. Within a few minutes, the terrible condition disappeared, and serenity was restored to his heart, and his ears resumed hearing. He heard the sadhu saying, "Truly, your guru is highly qualified and very powerful." The khadim said that he then understood that the spell over him was the inner influence which the sadhu was exercising. He then taunted the sadhu, "Is this all you could display? At least you should have demonstrated better ability." The sadhu was dejected and his face displayed his defeat. He turned away and never spoke again. Fourth anecdote. Maulana Zafar Ahmad narrates, "I was 6 years in the service of Hazrat Saharanpuri. I do not remember Hazrat missing Takbir-e-Tahrima except on one occasion. While making wudu, his gums bled. The bleeding continued for a considerable time. He sent the khadim to the masjid with the instruction not to delay the namaz. On that day, he missed Takbir-e-Tahrima because of a valid reason, but even on that day, he did not miss the rakat." 5. On the occasion of Hazrat Gangohi's demise, the people were grieving. It was the time of Jummah. Hazrat observed a man wailing in grief and professing his love for Hazrat Gangohi. He was crying out, "Oh, let me make ziyarat of Hazrat." It became difficult for people to perform namaz, but because they regarded this man to be an ardent devotee of Hazrat Gangohi, no one said anything. Hazrat Saharanpuri went into the masjid, and after whispering something to Sheikhul Hind, Hazrat Mahmudul Hasan, he came outside. In anger, he admonished the man, saying, "I know that you are very much grieved. I know that you are Hazrat's devotee." Then Hazrat ordered the man to be expelled from the masjid. He said, "Put him out of the masjid. He is neither Hazrat's khadim nor has he love for Hazrat." All the people were surprised. Afterwards, it was ascertained that he was a bidati who had applied to his hand a kind of powder which would blacken the face if rubbed on. This discovery was indeed a karamat of Hazrat Gangohi and the firasat of Hazrat Saharanpuri, who saw through the pretense of this man. 6. Once on the occasion of the annual Jalsa of Mazahirul Ulum, more than the expected number of guests came from the villages. The food prepared was not sufficient for even half the number. The madrasa's officials were greatly perturbed. There was no time to prepare more food. Maulana Abdul Latif explained the position to Hazrat. He said, "Cover the food with sheets. I am coming now." Hazrat came, read something, made dua for barakat, and blew on the food. He then instructed that the pots be kept covered with the cloths and the food should be taken out from under the cloths. Alhamdulillah, all the guests ate and a large quantity of food was left over. 7. Once Hazrat Saharanpuri, taking with him Maulana Zafar Ahmad, went to see Maulvi Abdullah Jan, an attorney. Along the way, Maulana Zafar Ahmad wondered, why does Hazrat go to such gentlemen without being called? If he invites, then it would be different. As this thought occurred, Hazrat, turning to Maulana Zafar Ahmad, said, "Maulvi Abdullah Jan's heart is very good, even though he appears like a man of the world." Maulana Zafar Ahmad was highly embarrassed. 8. A malicious Barelwi complained about Hazrat to the senior officer in charge of the Haram-e-Nabawi, Masjidun Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He informed the officer, who was a Turk, as follows: "At this moment, a man is sitting in Masjid-e-Nabawi imparting lessons. His beliefs regarding Nabi Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam are not good. In fact, he is disrespectful." The Turkish officer went red with anger and stormed off to Babul Rahma, where Hazrat was engaged in dars. When the Turkish officer's eyes fell on the blessed face of Hazrat Saharanpuri, his anger immediately dissipated. He remained for a while standing and listening to the talk. He then spontaneously exclaimed, "O Sheikh, a man complained about you, but having seen your face, I understand him to be a liar. This is not the face of a liar." After the officer had explained the complaint, Hazrat said, "They slander us and our seniors, distort our words, and publicize falsehood. We have assigned our mutual dispute to Allah Ta'ala. The officer told Hazrat to continue with his auspicious dars in peace. Ninth anecdote. A khadim wrote to Hazrat, Hazrat, the fear of publicity is attached to dhikr bil jahr, making dhikr audibly. People will regard one as a pious person. Thus, there exists the possibility of riya, showing off. Hazrat said, Inshallah, there will not be the fear of show and publicity. In this age, those who take Allah's name or pursue dini knowledge are branded mad. Thus, the question of riya does not apply. Riya pertains to such acts which are viewed with favor by people. 10th anecdote. Hazrat said, Dhikr should be with wudu. In fact, a salik should be perpetually with wudu and should recite ismizat or nafi ithbat carefully and with serenity. Attention should be paid to the meanings. It is best to wake up in the later part of the night and engage in the dhikr after tahajjud. It is the time of barakat and kubuliyat. Furthermore, greater peace and tranquility settle on the heart at this time. 11. Hazrat would frequently say, My relationship with a person is along with the beard. If the beard disappears, my relationship with that person comes to an end. 12. Hazrat said the dress of Christians, shaving the beard or cutting it, women wearing male-like shoes, reduction in parda, etc., have become a universal calamity which has spread like an epidemic. Whomever one looks at is caught up in this disease, except a few. According to them, keeping a beard is neither a salient feature of Islam nor the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, they have an abhorrence for the appearance of Islam. In such conditions, the acquisition of Allah's love is impossible. 13. He said, the salik should ensure that he consumes halal food so that nuraniyat develops in him. It is necessary to abstain from haram and mushtabah, doubtful things, because these produce zulmat. 14. Gifts should be accepted from only such people who give out true love or who have a dini relationship for a lawful motive. Gifts should not be accepted from those who have worldly motives or unlawful motives. 15. If the greater part of a man's earnings is haram or mushtabah, do not accept from him invitation. However, do not pry into the affairs and conditions of Muslims without valid reason. 16. The essence of muraqabah, meditation, is to guard the heart. The aim is to keep the heart alert by diverting it of all thoughts besides Allah Ta'ala. The practice of closing the eyes and sitting with the head lowered is merely to create in beginners the habit of developing solitude. Gradually, the heart becomes accustomed to solitude and concentration. Then muraqabah becomes a permanent condition, never ending at any time. 17. The little ibadat rendered with sincerity and constancy is far superior than the abundant ibadat rendered without sincerity and constancy. All the barakat of ibadat and riyadat are related to khulus and mudawamat, constancy. 18. Greater attention should be accorded to tahajjud namaz. It is the outstanding feature of the salihin. It is exceptionally beneficial for developing ruhaniyat. If it is missed during the night, 12 rakat should be performed after sunrise. 19. The purpose of tariqat, tasawwuf, is to lose interest in the world and in whatever there is in it, and to ground in the heart the love of Allah and His Rasul. The gaze should not be diverted from this purpose. 20. Kashf-e-Kubur, revelation of the realm of the graves, and Kashf-e-Kauniya, revelation of the spiritual realm of activities, are not worthy of attention. All such things are the sports of the infants of suluk. Frequently, such things become for most people dangerous and prevent them from attaining the true goal of suluk. 21. Two things are extremely harmful for the salik: relationship with bid'ah and ingratitude for the bounties of Allah. Remain attached to the men of Allah. If one has their love in the heart, insha'Allah, one's khatima end will never be bad. If If there is malice in the heart for the men of Allah, a bad khatima is a very strong likelihood and danger. Even if one does nothing, mere entry into the silsila is also not without benefit. 22. Qurb-e-ilahi, nearness to Allah, and barakat will increase according to the degree of increase of the presence of heart and obedience to the sunnah. His works, the works of Hazrat Maulana Khalil Ahmed. Allah Ta'ala has created Hazrat Saharanpuri a man of many attributes. While his spiritual benefits on the one hand are being perpetuated in the form of Madrasa Mazahirul Ulum, on the other hand, a great and wonderful organization of tarbiyat is related to him. Then there are his books, which he had compiled and written after long and thorough research and in-depth study. These are wonderful objects in his memory. Some of his works were occasioned by specific circumstances. These books will be briefly outlined. 1. After completion of his academic studies in 1288 Hijri, his natural desire for the subject of adab, Arabic literature, took him to Lahore. After accomplishing his study at Lahore, his maternal uncle, Hazrat Maulana Yaqub, sent him to Munsuri Hill to translate Qamus, a famous Arabic dictionary, into Urdu. Although this was Hazrat's first literary undertaking, it could not be ascertained if the book was completed or not. 2. Hazrat had written a voluminous book of 888 pages in refutation of Shiism in 1306 while he was employed as the Sadr Mudarris of Madrasa Diniyat in Bawalpur. The name of the book is Hidayatul Rashid ila Ifhamil Anid. This book was the outcome of numerous debates and disputes initiated with Hazrat by a malicious anti-Sunni follower of Shiism, viz. One Sayyid Chirag Shah, who was the administrative officer. 3. Maulvi Abdussami Rampuri had published a book, Anwar-e Satya, on the issue of Maulud and Fatiha. This book was an endeavor to prove the validity on the customary acts of bid'at related to these practices. In this book, the author made a concerted attempt to pass off innovationary customs in the guise of sunnah and mustahab. In refutation of this book, Hazrat wrote Al-Barahinul Qatiya ala Zulamil Anwaris Satya in 1304. It consists of 279 pages. 4. Hafiz Amirullah Barelvi was involved with a Shia in a debate on some contentious masail. He went to the ulama of Barelvi for aid, but they could offer none. Maulvi Ahmad Raza Khan said in response to his request, "Give 1,000 rupees and take the answer." When asked the reason for wanting this large sum, he replied that it was needed to purchase books on Shiism, which will be studied. Thereafter, an answer would be forthcoming. Finally, Hafiz Amirullah was constrained to go to Hazrat Saharanpuri, who wrote down the answers immediately. He then commenced writing a book on the subject. The book consists of 143 pages and its name is Matrakatul Karamat ala Miratil Imamat. After publication of this book, Hazrat lived for 40 years, but no votary of Shiism could refute it. Hafiz Amirullah, despite his differences, was stunned by the answers given by Hazrat. Throughout his life, he acknowledged that Hazrat was a unique allama of his time. 5. In a book, Husamul Haramain, Maulvi Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi had attributed false beliefs to the ulama of Deoband, and on the basis of this falsehood, he branded the ulama of Deoband as kafir. He managed to secure the signatures of the ulama of the Haramain in support of his false pronouncement. In consequence, the ulama of Medina sent a questionnaire of 27 questions to Hazrat Saharanpuri. In these questions, they sought to ascertain the aqaid of the ulama of Deoband. Hazrat furnished answers corroborated by detailed proofs. This book is known as Al-Muhannad al-Mufannad. However, its popular name is Tasdiqat li Daf Talbisat. It was written in 1325 and consists of 72 pages. 6. Tanshitul Athan fi Tahqiqi Mahalil Athan is a booklet of 32 pages written in substantiation of the second Adhan of Jummah being recited inside the masjid. The issue is proved by means of Quranic and Hadith proofs by the ta'ammul of the Salaf and by ijma'. 7. Itmamun Ni'am was written in 1313 on the instruction of Hazrat Imdadullah. It is a translation of the Arabic kitab Tabweebul Hikam, which deals with the subtleties of tasawwuf and ma'rifat. 8. Bazul Majhud fi Halli Abi Dawood is a unique sharah of Abu Dawood Sharif. This highly authoritative commentary was the product of Hazrat's natural affinity for hadith and fiqh. The fruit of his expertise and depth in these two subjects could only be an incomparable and highly authoritative work on which the ulama of hadith can repose their confidence while viewing it with pride. The inspiration to embark on this work had repeatedly occurred to Hazrat, but due to various circumstances, the most important being his preoccupation with his teaching profession, commencement was delayed. Overwhelming enthusiasm finally compelled Hazrat to begin this task. On 2nd Rabiul Awwal 1335, all those books needed for this undertaking were acquired from the library of Mazahirul Ulum. On the 3rd or 4th Rabiul Awwal 1335, the work of writing this kitab was commenced in that room of Darul Talaba, which today is the madrasa's treasury. Shaking palsy had already begun in Hazrat's hand. The duty of writing therefore devolved on this humble one, i.e. Sheikh Zakaria. Although there was an occasional change of scribes, the eternal scribe Allah Ta'ala had chosen this fortune for me. The writing ultimately devolved entirely on me. On 30th Dhul-Qa'dah 1335, after 9.25 months, one chapter of Abu Dawood Sharif was completed. At the time of commencing this commentary, Hazrat never imagined that it would be accomplished. In fact, the intention initially was to complete only one para. After having accomplished the first chapter, work started on Kitabut Taharat and then on Kitabut Salah. With the ending of Kitabut Salah, the urge to accomplish the first volume developed. The work was in progress until 1344 when Hazrat departed for Hijaz. In his enthusiasm to complete the task, he took me along. In Medina, we were fully occupied in this work. On the 21st Sha'ban 1345, after 10 years, 5 months, and 10 days, the Sharah annotation was finally accomplished. In happiness, Hazrat had invited the ulama of Medina. This kitab consists of 2063 large pages. Hazrat's Khulafa. The names of Hazrat's Khulafa appear here under. Hazrat Hafiz Kamruddin, Imam of the Saharanpur Masjid. Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Yahya Khandalvi. Maulana Abdullah Gangohi, Al-Haj Muhammad Hussain Habshi in the Naqshbandi Silsila. Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ilyas, founder of Tablighi Jamaat. Hafiz Fakhruddin Ghaziabad. Maulana Hafiz Faizul Hassan Gangohi. Hazrat Maulana Ashik Ilahi Mirati. Maulana Rashid Ahmad Mudarris Anjuman Hidayatul Rashid of Garot. Conclusion. As mentioned at the beginning, the manuscript of this book had commenced in 1335 Hijri. Like many other manuscripts, this one too remained incomplete on account of my involvement with hadith, which was increasing day by the day. Nowadays, my grandson Maulvi Shahid Mudarris at Madrasa Mazahirul Ulum is in possession of my manuscripts. As a result of his efforts and devotion, checking on these manuscripts has been completed after several months. Changes and deletions had also to be made. Important additions were also effected. I have always regarded the presence of Maulana Al-Haj Mufti Muhammad Mahmud Hassan Sahib, the Sadr Mufti of Darul Uloom Deoband, of Maulana Muhammad Aqil, and of Maulvi Muhammad Salman necessary. However, due to their occupations, they could make time available for checking this book only on Fridays. Every Friday, they would spend a few hours on this book. Today, the 16th Rabiul Awwal 1393 Hijri, this book was completed purely by the kindness and grace of Allah Ta'ala. An explanatory note. Hazrat Aqdas Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi Rahmatullah Alayh. Southwest of Saharanpur is a town known as Gangoh. Allah Ta'ala has blessed this town with 3 akabir of the silsila. 2 of them have already been discussed namely Hazrat Shah Abdul Quddus and Hazrat Shah Abu Sa'id. The third illustrious personality is Hazrat Imam Rabbani. At one at one and the same time, he was an alim of the deen, an authority of the Shariat and Tariqat, an ashik of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and a staunch follower of the Sunnah. He is that noble soul who has been designated Imam Rabbani by his ardent devotees. His name was Rashid Ahmad. Hazrat Imam Rabbani was born on Sunday 6th Dhul Qa'dah 1244 Hijri at the time of Chasht in Gangoh. His father, Maulana Ahmed Sahib, died in the year 1252 at the age of 35 years. Imam Rabbani's age at the time was 7 years. After the demise of his father, Hazrat was taken care of and trained by his grandfather. Birth on a Sunday and being orphaned in early childhood are two features of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life which Allah Ta'ala bestowed to Imam Rabbani. His very first ustad was Mianji Kutub Bakhsh Gangohi. Even during early childhood, his ustad spoke glowingly of his intelligence and alertness. It was the habit of Mianji Kutub to smell the mouths of his pupils and question them of the food they had ate. When the pupils informed him, he would say, "You ate alone. Why did you not bring anything for me?" In view of this habit, Hazrat Imam Rabbani had adopted the practice of bringing along his food. He would not eat of it. Rather, he would present it to his ustad. For several days, the housefolk were unaware of this sacrifice. However, after a few days, when they observed oily marks on his clothes, they admonished him and demanded an explanation. In this way, they learned of his sacrifice. This was the effect of that good fortune and that ability to sacrifice which were naturally endowed to him. He would occasionally say that it was in either his fourth or fifth year when his mother gave him and his elder brother, Maulvi Inayat Ahmad, some milk to drink. He continues, "I insisted that the quantity of milk be increased. My elder brother did not view my insistence with favor. My brother, after drinking his share, drank my share too. I then realized that the outcome of obstinacy is deprivation." It has not been established where Hazrat had learnt the Quran Majid. Probably he learnt it from his mother at home. In those times, the females of the nobility were fully versed in the Quran Majid and knowledge of the Sharia. He studied Farsi by his maternal uncle Maulana Muhammad Taqi in Karnal. Part of his Farsi was also learned under Maulvi Muhammad Gauth. He studied the primary textbooks of Arabic grammar by Maulvi Muhammad Bakhsh Rampuri. On his encouragement, Hazrat went in the pursuit of further knowledge to Delhi in 1261. At this time, he was 17 years. In Delhi, he joined the classes of different ustads. However, he was not satisfied to stay in any place here. By a sheer good coincidence and the qudrat of Allah Ta'ala, the ustad of all subjects, Hazrat Maulana Mamluk Ali, was returning from a Hijaz trip, and on his way to Nanota passed by Delhi. The holidays were about to end, hence he brought along Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Qasim Nanotwi for pursuing knowledge in Delhi. Imam Rabbani, who had not yet commenced his studies systematically because of his inability to settle down, arrived by Maulana Mamluk Ali. Thus, Hazrat Imam Rabbani acquired his ulum Zahiriya under the guidance of one ustad. He studied the kitab Sadra Shams-e-Bazigha by Maulana Mamluk Ali in the same way as a Hafiz teaches the Quran. He stayed a few years in Delhi until he had accomplished his academic pursuit. His other ustads in the philosophical branches are Maulana Mufti Sadruddin and Qadi Ahmaduddin. His ustad in hadith was Maulana Shah Abdul Ghani Naqshbandi. He engrossed himself so thoroughly in the acquisition of knowledge that he devoted only 7 hours to all his needs, such as eating, sleeping, etc. This means that 17 hours daily were devoted to studies. After completion of his studies, he returned home at the age of about 21. For the entire duration of his stay in Delhi, he had made his own food arrangements. He never imposed on anyone. Every month, 3 rupees were sent from home. This would suffice for all his needs. Now he began teaching in Gangoh. He taught a variety of subjects. This occupation continued until the end of 1300 Hijri. From 1301, his preoccupation was only with hadith. He alone would teach all 6 kitabs of Sihah Sitta, the 6 authentic books of hadith. Hadith lessons would commence during the month of Shawwal, By Sha'ban, all 6 books would be completed. Imam Rabbani himself had explained many times his initiation into suluk. He said, when Maulana Muhammad Qasim and I were studying in Delhi, we intended to study the kitab Sulam. But in view of the heavy engagement of Hazrat Ustad, it was decided that the kitab would be taught only twice a week. Once, while the lesson of Sulam was in progress, a man with a green lungi over his shoulders entered. Spontaneously, Hazrat Ustad, together with all the khuddam, stood up and greatly honored the man. Hazrat Ustad then said, Rashid, the lesson will continue another day. I lamented much the loss of that day's lesson. I said to Maulvi Muhammad Qasim with some sarcasm, this is some good Haji, our lesson is lost. Maulvi Muhammad Qasim responded, don't speak like that. He is a Buzruk and among the chosen ones. After having narrated this incident, Hazrat Imam Rabbani said, little did we know that it would be this self-same Haji who would guide us. He also said, during my student days, on account of studying hadith, I remained for a considerable time in the service of Hazrat Abdul Ghani Muhajir Madani. I therefore repeatedly resolved to become bayat to him, but every time Maulana Nanotwi would put me off, saying that we should make bayat with Hazrat Imdad. Thereafter, his relationship and affection for Haji Sahib went on increasing until he became wholly dedicated to Haji Sahib, culminating in bayat on his hands of truth. The episode of his initiation is as follows. Subhanallah.
استغفر الله.